Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Line update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. This podcast is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing. BetOnline has more ways to stay in the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. We keep the dog days of summer rolling with the largest selection of odds on everything, with updated odds on Major League Baseball, UFC, and boxing to tennis and NFL futures. BetOnline remains the best online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. Penn State fans, are you feeling confident that the Nittany Lions can win college football's national championship next season? Lock in your futures bet at betonline.ag today. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to State of State. I'm Tom Hannafin. He's Justin King. This week, we're going to be digesting and analyzing a lot of the comments from the recent weeks where we heard from Penn State's offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki, and Penn State's defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles. We're going to break down the comments from Kotelnicki later on this week here on the show, some of the players that he's been highlighting, Jim Knowles, his influence on Andy Kotelnicki, and vice versa. But today we're going to focus on the defense and some of the things that Jim Knowles had to say. Had a lot of glowing things to say about Lockdown U, the defensive backs, Justin, your stepfather, Terry Smith. So it's extremely complimentary. There are a lot of things that we can get to here in regards to the defensive backs. I think one position that I'd like to start with here is linebacker, because that's certainly been one of the questions on the defense. Linebacker, defensive end, defensive tackle, definitely spots where people are like, hey, we're looking for answers once camp gets underway. One player that was certainly highlighted, and considering that he's so new to the program, has been Amare Campbell, the transfer from UNC. What is his role really going to look like as a linebacker on this team? And Jim Knowles was very complimentary of Amare Campbell. And at the same time, recently James Franklin had talked about in the transfer portal, not necessarily looking for projection, but looking for production. Jim Knowles, when he was asked about Amare Campbell, said, quote, Amare has the ability to play in space and inside the box. Really nice combination of the athletic skills necessary to operate in the open field. But when it came to being tough inside, those are the linebackers that are hard to find. Can they be in space? Can they defend the straight ahead run? And I saw both of that from him. So in your opinion, in this era of the game, when it comes to that type of linebacker, how difficult is that to find?
Linebackers are a difficult position for multiple reasons. One, the size verification is tough to find, just the length and the girth that's needed to play the position, right? To be able to cover space, bang with the big offensive lineman and all those different things. But then at the same time, now you're asking them to do, different things in space, whether it's blitzing, and then have the intellect to be able to set up everything. So it's a special human being to just play the position, whether it's just from a physical standpoint or even just having enough snap counts under your belt to be an instinctive player. So it's a tough position, and as it's continued to evolve into like that small safety type of prospect. It's definitely a premium position, and when you have them, you value them.
It's the interesting thing, especially about Jim Knowles, because a lot has been talked about in regard to the base 4-2-5 defense, 4 down linemen, 2 linebackers, 5 defensive backs. But that fifth spot, typically referred to in his defenses as the jack position, Penn State typically refers to that as the lion position. That was something that Knowles was asked about, and he said, quote, "It's kind of an interchangeable position. You can put a linebacker there, and that's really limited. You can put a safety there, and that gives you more options, and then you can put a corner there, and it gives you different options. A lot of it does have to be game planned based on the opponent." And that was the one thing I heard a lot from Jim Knowles in this presser, is him saying, like, hey, a lot of it's just going to depend week to week. And it does sound more like a pro defensive model, is that, yeah, this is what we want to do. This is what we like to do, but we're not just going to remain rigid and do the exact same thing every single week. Would you agree with that?
I think you have to. And it's like these offensive coordinators have gotten too good over the years to where you can play base defenses or just check 3-by-1, or when they go 2-by-2, get out of a blitz, like all the normal, fundamentals of football and college football. You could no longer do due to the offensive coordinators like Kotonicki's that are out there that can draw up things and find the holes in the defense and kind of redesign their whole offensive scheme, whether they dress it up in a different way. So I think it's a very imperative for a defensive coach to be able to have the personnel and know how to sometimes just call to an offensive coordinator's offense, right? Because that's what you see a lot of times in the NFL when you're, instead of just like spot dropping or playing man, like, no, they're matching routes and like eliminating crossers and different things that offenses essentially predicate their route of their attack on. We talk about that. You kind of take away things and try to limit, the probabilities where you can get it affected or where you can try to make plays to condense the game. So I think that's an elite thing from a defensive coordinator to say, because that's next level stuff. I mean, that's because when you're trying to win a national championship, you're trying to stop certain things.
No, it makes sense. Like, if you trot the exact same thing out there every single week, then you're going to show tendencies, and it is more of a pro model. But also, like, sitting there in June and being like, hey, who's going to play that spot? He's like, it'll depend on who we're playing that week. And to be able to go corner, safety, or linebacker in that spot just gives you a ton of options.
Well, that's the position flexibility that you look for in your recruiting process, right? To be able to have these guys that have the flexibility of intellect to understand the concepts of his defense, to know, okay, I just need a spot dropper here, or we're doing this person's blitzing. Because once you understand defense and the concepts, everyone should be able to be on the back seven, should be interchangeable. You know what I mean? And when you talk about bringing in the blitz, I mean, you can talk about dropping linemen, and secondary guys can be rushers, right? So there's so many different ways when you get creative in football, when guys understand the concepts, have the skills to execute those concepts. And on top of that, they become somewhat of like an extension of that coach to be able to do these things. And that's where you really build that trust within the coaching staff and the players. Because it's like, hey, what do you see out here? Because I know we were preparing for this, but like, that's not how they're coming today. So how are we going to affect and stop this offense from attacking us? And I think that's a basis or a foundation for a strong defense.
The one interesting comment was from linebackers coach Dan Connor, especially referring to Amare Campbell. Coming back to that, he called Amare Campbell an impossible find. And you're very in tune with what it's like in the winter portal versus the spring portal. To go find a guy with his type of production and this much eligibility remaining, and also a guy who can do all the things that Jim Knowles was talking about, being able to play in space, but being able to stick your nose in there and play the run in the multifaceted ways that it's been required of linebackers to play as the years have gone on. Is that a diamond in the rough find, especially in the spring portal?
Absolutely. But when you have great bait, in the sense of, you talk about LBU, you have like that magnet that's connected to you when you're going to attract the top linebackers that are out there that maybe certain schools wouldn't attract, right? So I think for Penn State, it's not too out of the ordinary or an outlier, because they attract top tier linebackers. But to find a linebacker in this space, yes, that's rare.
especially when James Franklin after the blue-white game is like, come to linebacker you, there's a spot for you. So putting out a casting call
Exactly.
certainly helps as well. Staying with the linebackers, because this is part of the acclimation process for Jim Knowles, is he's learning the roster right now. He was asked if, as he started game planning for, Nevada and all those teams, and he's like, I'm still getting acclimated to who we have, because remember when he came in the winter, it's like, okay, who's available? Because you still have the recovery process from the 2024-2025 season for a lot of these players. Some guys weren't even available in spring ball. So he's like, for instance, Alonzo Ford, he's like, he's sitting there getting the mental reps and he's doing all the things with us in spring practice, except actually physically participating. So he's like, I haven't truly seen Alonzo Ford yet. So he's like, I'm still evaluating these guys. And it's whenever they do get cleared. And one of those players, sticking with the linebackers, is Tony Rojas, who James Franklin said Tony Rojas is going to be good to go for training camp. Jim Knowles said, quote, Tony Rojas has picked up a lot by just learning in the spring. Camp is going to be huge for him. His development has got to be faster. The expectations are high. He's going to have to pick up the corrections at a faster pace. Can you articulate what Rojas is about to go through? New defensive coordinator, some similarities, some differences, but you weren't able to get on the field during spring, and a lot is being asked of you as the primary linebacker in 2025.
He's going to have to figure out how to take off the thinking cap as fast as possible and be able to read and react. As you know, especially with expectations on your back, whether you're pressing and doing different type of things, the linebacker position is one of the few that is manipulated by offensive coordinators, right? With bad eyes and not reading your keys and just making sure that certain things are lined up before you become an instinctual player. And I think as he continues to grow in his maturation process as a linebacker, I mean, the snaps are needed, right? We know that he's a talented player, but with a new defensive coordinator, you're asked to do different things, different calls, and just a little shifts there. So you need those reps to play smooth and play fast. So I think getting back into it, he needs to understand the defense as fast as possible, understand his keys, and like play through those mistakes in the summertime, right? Or in the summer when you're with the team and when you get in the training camp. So by the time you hit week 1, you're out there with your hair on fire.
Moving to the defensive line, and I do want to get to defensive back because there are a lot of wonderful comments from Jim Knowles on that front. But speaking of the defensive line, especially, there's a lot of conversation about, okay, Denai Dennis Sutton missed a good amount of spring because he was recovering from this past season. And we heard that from James Franklin as like, yeah, we're not going to ask a dude who just went from, August into January playing high level ball for us to, okay, now let's do every little last thing during spring, taking care of the guys that are really going to make a big impact. So it's like, all right, Max Granville goes down, and Jim Knowles expressed a lot of confidence in Zariah Fisher, similar messaging that we heard from James Franklin in terms of we expect him to have a breakout season. Jim Knowles has similar expectations for Fish. The defensive tackle spot, like I was just saying, Alonzo Ford is expected to potentially be that second defensive tackle after Zane Durant. Jim Knowles said, quote, I was impressed with the other tackles outside of Zane. Mentioned Xavier Gilliam, Ty Blanding, Owen Wafel, who's the transfer from Michigan, and then Randy Aderica, who is a freshman who's just come in. Knowles went on to say, everybody knows about Zane. I haven't seen Ford yet. He's a guy that Deion Barnes thinks really highly of. I'm really happy with the depth at defensive tackle. For what you know about Jim Knowles, he doesn't seem like the type of guy to just be like, I'm really happy about this position, just to kind of put that messaging out there. Like, he seems like a no BS type of guy. So if he's putting that out there, one, he believes in it. And two, that says that he trusts his position coaches like Dan Connor and Deion Barnes, for you and I think the world of. So how much do you think Knowles is leaning on his position coaches this early in his assimilation process to the staff?
I think you have to lean on them extremely heavily at this point in the process. And I don't even know if he's a no BS guy, more so than just a very matter of fact guy. Like when I had a good conversation with him last time I was up there for one of the prospect camps, and like, again, very matter of factly but chill. So he didn't come off as no BS or no, like, a very stern guy. It was just very, like, more so laid back swag, like, hey, this is kind of what we do. So like stop it if you want, like you know what I mean? I think in the same vein. But yeah, I think you have to lean on the coaches that have been there for a successful defensive run that these guys have had for the past like 5 or 6 years, regardless with the new coordinator. So I think that's just intelligent to come in as a coach. I mean, this is a top tier coach, the highest paid defensive coordinator in the country. So we're not talking, a guy that is new to the show.
Arguably the best at his position in the country, depending on who you talk to. The one thing that Knowles spoke a lot about is how collaborative the coaching staff is. And he said he immediately saw how good the culture was with the coaching staff, with the individual rooms. Talked about Terry Smith quite a great deal there in terms of how the defensive back room behaves and the accountability there. And there was a lot of conversation by Kotelnicki and Knowles of, hey, did you guys watch back Ohio State, Penn State from last year? And the answer is yes. And they kind of ping pong notes back and forth. And he's like, there's a lot of respect. And he's like, there's no hoarding of information. There's no guys protecting their turf. There's no ego. It's everybody on the same team trying to get better. And they're just trying to win games, was the overall messaging from Jim Knowles. Was like, hey, if this is going to make us better, then we're going to do it. And it sounds like the way that he was describing it is that's a rarity amongst college football coaching staffs. Would you agree with that?
Which part?
The collaboration element, because we did hear how at Ohio State, allegedly, things with Larry Johnson Sr. and Jim Knowles, there was some friction there in terms of what Larry Johnson Sr. wanted versus what Jim Knowles wanted versus what Ryan Day wanted. And it didn't necessarily sound like it was a collaboration.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is a pretty collaborative type of environment there. I'm trying to think of versus others. I mean, you have to know how like all the different pieces of the puzzle fit, I would think, right? So I think that's what you see from the byproduct of like the stability of the program over the years, right? With all the different things that are happening outside of, the rules and the settlement based on these type of things where everybody's coming to a collective decision. So I know that is definitely, that's definitely a part of the culture. I guess I never identified that as something that was unique because I mean, it's one of the predictors of success. So some guys don't do it, but I never looked at it as a unique thing. But now that he's saying that, it is a very collaborative environment.
Knowles said everybody's pulling in the same direction.
100%. Like you're forced. I mean, not you're forced to. Is like it's like set up to say like, are we checked here? Are we here?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's healthy conflict built in. And now that I'm saying this out loud, like I guess that is the collaborative fact where, hey, we get to a solution and continue to move forward. But everyone's speaking the same language. Everybody's moving along. I think when you see that lack of stability or framing, sometimes we see that in the position groups, right? That's what we talk about receivers or the offensive side of the football over the years when we just talk about which position coaches have been gone or has stability and having guys being able to build that culture within that collaborative effort, because it is a unique culture. Even going there and just checking out different camps around the country as the summer continues to roll around.
Speaking about position groups, I do want to get to defensive back. That was the position Jim Knowles said that he was the most pleasantly surprised with. He said, quote, our corners are a real strength in this defense. I've been impressed by not only the way they cover, the culture in that room, as I was talking about with Coach Smith, the accountability, the way they practice. I'm really impressed. He said, I remember Terry when he was a high school coach, didn't know him personally, always a lot of respect for Terry within the profession. Jim Knowles went on to talk about A.J. Harris in particular, who there are plenty of outlets who believe A.J. Harris could be arguably one of the best defensive backs in college football this upcoming season, considering how young he is. It's tremendous. Knowles said the objective right now is giving AJ more tools within the defense. He said, quote, he can play man, but we want to give him the opportunity to find the leverage on the receiver, know where your help is, play some different coverages that they haven't played in the past, giving him an opportunity to make more plays and really understand football better. I think he could move around the defense more, but you don't want to give him up going against the top receiver. It's just a matter of challenging him with all those things he needs to know for us and needs to know for him. So far, so good. He's picking it up. It's a pretty impressive endorsement. And the one thing that Knowles talked about that I thought was so great is that he made a comparison to Wayne Gretzky in terms of the way that he tries to coach. And then he's like, Wayne Gretzky, when he went to score, he was like, I didn't go to the puck. I went to where the puck was going to be. Mm-hmm. And he's like, it's getting my defense and all of my guys to trust that when I call a play, it's because I know that's where the ball is going. So you just have to trust and do your job based on the assignment, and we'll all see things the same way. Also, hearing him say that, hey, we don't want to sacrifice A.J. Harris against the top receiver. Pretty clear cut there that they believe A.J. Harris is the best corner that they have. What did you think about Knowles and his evaluation of A.J. at this point?
That's pretty cool. I mean, for him to see the talent and where he can go, and even giving a little tidbit on how he's going to use them and his philosophy moving forward. Like you said, like not to move him around, but hey, this is where the ball's going to be, and trusting him. I think that's extremely important for defensive backs to trust their defensive coordinator, because, you know, when things don't work or when you're left out to dry, they don't really point to the defensive coordinator. They point at you for getting beat. So like that trust factor with those guys is important, because I know I've had my battles and my run-ins.
You've had your battles, yes.
I've had my run-ins.
Yeah. Knowles talked about the 5th DB spot. He said, we didn't really get to see Zion Tracy because he was out all spring, you know, similar situation for a lot of guys. So he said, I'm looking forward to seeing what Zion can do there. We did that 5th DB spot with safety Colin Dinkins and cornerback Kenny Wosley Jr. Had a lot of good things to say about Wosley. He said, I was impressed with both those guys. Thought Wosley had a real surge in the second half of spring, really picking up on things, and that's what you want there, a guy there with corner skills. Dinkins has more safety skills, so I think they both kind of complement each other, but I was impressed with the way they picked it up. And then he had this to say about true freshman cornerback Daryus Dixson, who you and I have talked about a lot on this show. Jim Knowles said definitely could see him getting some playing time this year, maybe in a significant capacity. Said, quote, I was as impressed with Daryus as I've been with any freshman in my career who's still supposed to be in high school. Incredible maturity, consistency, doesn't get too high or too low. He has the maturity to play right away. Doesn't get much better than that.
That's high praise right there.
That's crazy.
That's what you want to hear, especially from a mid-year enrolling. But it's a testament to, I mean, the kid coming in ready to compete. He's somebody that, when I went up in the spring, he caught my eye from the casual standpoint, just watching somebody making a play. Like, oh, who's that? Oh, that's the freshman from Mater Dei. And I mean, I've heard nothing but good things. So I'm excited to see how he performs this year.
A lot of really intriguing comments from Jim Knowles, defensive coordinator for Penn State football. Let us know how you guys feel about all this, all the different players that we've highlighted here for the defense. There are a lot more things that Jim Knowles had to say that we're going to keep an eye on as this summer progresses and we get towards training camp. Later on this week, we're going to dive into offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki's comments on Drew Aller, the running game, Trebor Pena, and a lot more. That's all to come this week on State of State. Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by BetOnline and by Blue White Outfitters.